Do you want to sell your business? Do you ever have a dream of being acquired? Or just as important, do you want to be in your business so you work on the business and not just in the business? Friends, I could not be more excited to dive into conversations that people are not talking about online. And I'm going to do it with somebody who she blew my dang mind. And I said, I can't keep her a secret anymore. I can't contain the magic that is Shay Bacani. Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here, especially coming from you. That is a huge compliment.
Oh, thank you. I really mean it, though. I'm not even hyping you up. I don't lie. I'm just very honest.
Mm-hmm.
So my endorsement comes with a lot of credibility because I invited you into a room and then I sat as a student of you. And you just took us to business church. We all wanted to repent after. We're like, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong. Okay, so I'm actually going to start there if that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring the audience in. So Shay spoke at a mastermind of mine in April 2025. Now, back in August, I dropped a podcast explaining how I met Shay, how our paths intersected. So I'm going to link it in the show notes, but we're not going to spend much time there about how we met because I actually want to start about how the woman came into the room and she left no crumbs. So let me set the scene. We're all sitting there in this kind of beautiful clubhouse. And Shay has an iPad and she passes around this iPad and she says, can you please write your year-end financial goal? So she passed around the iPad with the stylus and all 20 women are writing their numbers. And then she says, okay, so what are the 3 things that you need to hit that revenue goal? And so people are writing down their notes. All of us are good students. And then she says, okay, now what needs to be true for your yearly revenue for you to make it in a month? Everyone's just like, oh, snap. So then they're kind of sitting there. And then she says, if you were to make this a month, what would you need to achieve this? And so all of us start writing. And then she flips the script and she said, what needs to be true in order for you to make this amount in a week? So what she did was she took our context of time and money, what we can do in 12 months, and she then challenged us all the way down to what needs to be true in your business to get that done in a week. Shay, all of it. And that was the first 6 minutes of the conversation. Yes. And we're like, oh, we weren't ready. We weren't ready. So I brought you back on the show because I wanted to extend what we were talking about in the mastermind. But right as we sat down, you're like, Jasmine, I just want to say things that people aren't saying about businesses. I was like, okay, hold on. Let's press record and let's get this started. So let's start there. What are people saying that they should really be saying? Where do you think the gap is right now?
The gap is that most people want to tell you how to make 7 figures, but they're not going into the conversation of how do you build a business that's actually an asset. That's not just a lifestyle business. So most people are like, here's how you build a 7-figure business. Here's how you're able to travel to Costa Rica. Here's how you're able to work from anywhere. Okay, but how do we build assets? How do we actually build real power? Because as women, that's what we always say we want. We always feel that we're oppressed. We have no power. Okay, power is made through acquiring assets and acquiring real wealth. When you have a lifestyle business, you don't really have much of that. You can't sell the business.
Describe a lifestyle business.
So a lifestyle business is a business that typically does, let's say, $1 to $3 million in revenue. It is very successful. You're able to pay yourself, take a family vacation once in a while, pay your team, but you cannot take off for a month at a time. You can't even take off for 2 months at a time. You can't pass it down to your children. It's not an asset class. If an investor were to come in and purchase this business—
why do you say that's not a passable asset? If you can't take a month off, if you can't go on a long-term vacation, if you can't pass it to your kids, why not? What about that business has to be true?
It's too dependent on you as the founder. So you are showing up in too many areas of the business. So right now, and I talk about this a lot, there are a lot of founder-led brands. I'm not opposed to founder-led brands. The issue is that you are in marketing, you are involved in finance, you're involved in operations, you're involved in too many facets of the business where you actually aren't even needed. So if someone were to come in, let's say you want to pass it down, I'm not even going to say sell it. Let's say you want to pass it down to your children. Could your kid, you RIP today, not you specifically, anyone, could they seriously take this over in 24 to 48 hours? If the answer is no, this is not an asset. That is what is called as an asset. When you think about, everyone always loves to talk about old money and generational wealth. That is what makes wealth generational, is you're able to take one asset, one investment, and pass it down to your children. If you are not able to do that, then it's not an asset class. Or let's say you fall on hard times. Let's say you're done with the business, which a lot of people are. When you have a founder-led business, you get burnt out very, very quickly. Or you also you have so many ideas, you want to move on to the next thing. But oftentimes people are slaves to the business because they didn't build it in a way where I can step away. Or maybe if I don't want to sell 100%, I can sell 80% and be able to collect mailbox money. You can't even do that because you didn't set the business up properly. And so I want to teach women how to get out of this mindset of building these lifestyle businesses that look good online, but have no real infrastructure. You can't build any wealth from it. You can't pass down any wealth because as women, that is our biggest hurdle. It's not that we're not smart enough, we're not capable enough. We just aren't thinking about assets the way men are. And I've been in the rooms with men who they have these phenomenal, in their eyes, phenomenal ideas. They feel like they're building the next $50 million company, which, I mean, honestly, it's questionable. But they have this idea. And so they build this company with the idea this is going to be worth $50 million. When you build a company like that, you aren't building a lifestyle brand. You don't care about how many likes you're getting on Instagram. You're building something that is financially sound. You're building something that you know a board of directors just want to come in and take over. They want to come in and invest in. You already have that in mind. Women don't even think about that. They're saying, I want $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Even when I was at your mastermind, someone was like, what is the average? What's the number on there? What are people saying?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, the average is about, 3-4 million. That's the average number people want to make. If I were to go in a room with men who probably made the same amount those women make, 10 million, 50 million, 50, like men know how to dream very delusionally, and we have to commend them for that.
But we should be a little delulu.
We should be extremely, women actually, we came up with the term delulu. How are we not delulu when it comes to money, but we're delulu when it comes to our Pinterest board and the vacation? It's like, no, we got to get serious about wealth and about money. And when I have these conversations, women they don't look at wealth and money as something that they should be focused on. It's always looked at as very masculine. And, I joked one time to my husband that I was like, I love talking about like money and power. And he's like, yeah, but you can't say that out loud. I was like, well, why can't I? Like, I think it's weird if we aren't talking about it, because if we are always upset about being, I would say, not oppressed, because I don't want to like put that label on women, because I feel like we're so much past that now. But this idea that men are so much further ahead than us, or that they have much more access to opportunities. Okay, why? Because they control the ecosystem of power and assets. And so they have that mindset that matters to them. As women, it has to matter to us as well.
Okay. Oh, wait, we just need a pause right there. We're just getting started with the woman that is Shay Bacani. And so I want to talk about how, but before I do that, I want to put a little bit more context. What got you in your life to build you a business that is an asset that you can tell your husband and the World Wide Web that you like talking about money and power? What happened and what have you built?
Well, first, I would say I was always like this. Like, my dad worked in stocks and finance since I was little. So I've always had this introduction to finance and business in a different light. Like, my dad was very upfront. I'm from Chicago. So we talk like, we just say what it is. So he would always say like, these companies, these are the ones who are actually running America. Like, America is built on capitalism. And it wasn't like, oh, this is bad. It just is what it is. This is how the stock market works. This is how money works. So I've always just had this sort of understanding. But a couple years after 2008, like I mentioned, my dad worked in stocks. My mom worked in insurance. Both my parents ended up losing their job. My mom lost her job first. No one was really concerned. Like, we're like, oh, dad's got it. Okay, great. We didn't really understand the severity of what was going on. A couple months later, my dad lost his job. And then I was like, okay, well, just get another one. It's no big deal. But he worked in stocks. No one was hiring. It was really, really bad. It was really kind of like the aftermath of 2008, which no one really talks about the aftermath of recessions. It's actually way worse than the recession itself. So he couldn't find another job and things just took the worst turn. Now, both of my parents went to school. They were educated. They had the 401k. They bought the home. Every playbook that these financial educators told you to do, my parents did that. And so I was so confused. I just remember being so confused, like, why is all this happening? We lost our home. We lost our car. We had to move with family. By the age of 16, we were homeless, living with family members, and I had to go get a job working at Buffalo Wild Wings. And I remember when I first got my paycheck, I was like, oh my God, like, I can't wait. I'm going to get some new shoes. And my mom was like, no, if you want the TV to stay on, you have to pay for this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And so it was like my whole world had changed because I was very spoiled. I'm the only girl. It's just me and my older brother. Had everything I ever wanted. And now you're telling me I have to pay a bill? Like, it was just very odd to me. And to me, I was like, well, just go get a job. Like, just go get the savings. Things that everyone tells you to do when you fall on hard times. But it wasn't that simple. Because what was actually happening is we didn't actually have any control or power over our wealth. We had the illusion of money. So we had home, but we really just had debt. We had a car that got us to and from. We just had debt. We had the 401k, which my parents had later told me they were penalized for taking out early to use as a savings.
Yep.
So we had this illusion of money, but we didn't actually have money. So as this was happening, I would say I was obviously working just kind of in survival mode. But around the age of like 17, 18, I had just graduated college. I got pregnant very early. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm broke. I'm pregnant. Wasn't with the child's father anymore. And I was like, I have to figure life out very, very quickly. And I knew I didn't want to raise my child up in poverty because I wasn't raised up that way. It had happened, but I wasn't raised up that way. And so I moved to California at 18 and I was like, I'm just going to figure this thing out. But as I was doing that, I was like studying and researching about money and finance. And that's when I realized when we talk about the illusion, most people have an illusion of wealth, but they don't actually have wealth. Wealth is really power. Power is just control. You have control over your assets. You have control over whether you get to work or not. You get control over whether you can liquidate that asset. You get control over how much you get to pay in taxes. And so when you think about all these loopholes that people talk about the wealthy using, it's just really about power in itself. It's about how do I have the most control over the money that I make? And so that's what I became obsessed with. And it was really just because I'm like, I can't go back there. Like I knew what we came from. I remember living with family members, sleeping on the floor. I was like, this will never happen to me again. This will never happen to my children. So I just got obsessed with what wealth is and what power is because I felt powerlessness. So that's really where it kind of stems from.
Girl, I told you at my mastermind, I was like, I had creeped. Like CIA status. I did not know the Buffalo Wild Wing story.
Yeah. No, I think this is the first time I shared it because you know why I did? Because it's usually so doggone long when I get to the end of the story that I'm like, I'm not sharing all this.
It's so good. I'm leaning in. I'm like, say more.
No, that's why I'm always like, let's just start to the point about corporate because that's the part people want to know.
No, it's not.
Okay,
no, it's not. You on the wrong podcast. I'm like, ooh, no. Okay, if you liked that part, the corporate part is even better. But hold up. I am a storyteller. I need to know Shay. I want to see you. So you come out at 18. Where do you come to California, one of the most expensive states in the nation.
Yes.
And you're pregnant. What are you doing?
So so I actually had my daughter at 18. She was about 6 months when I moved here.
Okay.
So she was about 6 months old when I moved here, and which is still very, very young.
Yes.
And I was very determined. I was like, let me back it up a little bit. When I was working in Chicago, I was working as an admin for a company, just like regular doing administrative tasks.
Okay.
And I was doing really good there. You know, they throwing more things on me. And I remember thinking like, I just want to do makeup. That's the only thing I was good at. I just want to do makeup. That's what I thought. I'm going to go to California. I'm going to be a makeup artist in Los Angeles. When you're 18, you're very delusional.
Delulu. That's the theme. That's the theme.
I was so delusional. I was like, you know what? This is because at the time, all of these influencers, these beauty influencers, that's all I used to watch.
Okay.
They were getting the crazy brand deals.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I can just go there, do makeup on celebrities, make millions of dollars. Me and my daughter will be okay. This is awesome. Like that was literally my plan. And not understanding how expensive it is, not understanding that like most makeup artists don't make that much money, but being delusional, that's what I did. So the company I was working at, they actually had an office in San Diego. I was like, oh, that's not LA, but it'll do. I never went to San Diego before. I had never even went to California before. I would just see it on, Clueless. Okay. Like that was my idea of California was Clueless. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go there, make so much money. It's going to be ridiculous. Like I'm going to get myself out of this situation. My mom was actually on board with it. My mom's very delusional like I am.
Okay.
So she was like, oh my God, let's go. Like, we need to get out of this. Because we were like, she's like, we're broke here. Like, we have nothing left for us. So if this is our only opportunity, let's just do it. My dad was like, you guys are insane. Like, you have no money. Like, he's like obviously the logical person. We're like, well, we're going. So bye. And so we all left. He was like, okay, fine, I'll go. We drove 3 days from Chicago to San Diego, California.
My God.
I just took my last paycheck from my job and we just left. So my daughter's like very young. So we're like probably staying in like different motels along the way. Like it was just, when I think back on it, it's just pure insanity. We get here, stay in a hotel. Marissa had my last paycheck. My phone had just cut off because I couldn't pay the bill. It was either the hotel or the phone bill. Phone had just cut off. So I was just like, all right, we're starting fresh. This is what we're doing now. I started working at the company just as an admin. I absolutely hated this job.
Okay.
They treated me like crap. It goes back to this feeling of powerlessness of I see how people treat you when they know you have nothing. They knew I came here and I was living in a hotel trying to get things together. They didn't know all the depths of everything, of course. But like when people know you have nothing, oftentimes you see their true colors.
Ooh.
So I was just like, oh my God, I hate this. I did not last 9 months at this company because I was just like, this is wrong. Like how I'm getting treated is just terrible. So I applied for another job. What was funny though, and this is how like God always just sneaks in your blessings in different areas of your life. I hated this job, but they were overworking me. They start throwing accounting tasks on me. I'm like, I am a receptionist, dude. Like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, but can you do these invoices? Yeah, can you process this payment? Yeah, can you do, like, he's giving me all these different accounting tasks. I'm like, okay, like, do I get paid more? Nope. This is your job. Do it. Okay. I took that experience. I changed up my resume. I said, okay, this is what I do now. I do accounting. I do these things. And then I submit the resume out. I get a job at a larger biotech company, just doing accounting work. So obviously the pay is much more.
Yes.
Things are looking up. This company is huge. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And so obviously more money is coming through the door. One day, it was like probably a year into the company, a new CAO walks into the company, chief accounting officer. She's a woman. Gorgeous, bubbly, just full of personality. And this is the first time I ever seen a woman in the finance space that was like this. She had come from another company. She had just sold a company. So she was a CFO, then she was a CEO, and then she sold the company. Her resume was immaculate. I remember seeing her and I was like, I have to talk to her. I have to get to know her because I'd never seen a woman like that in finance. Up until that point, I was still like, I was doing makeup on the side as well as working full time. So I was like in a much better financial position. But like my heart was still set on, I'm going to be the celebrity makeup artist. Like I wasn't thinking about anything else. And to that point, I actually was doing a lot of like influencers. I actually got my work published in Essence magazine. I was doing celebrities and brides. So like things were working out. But like I mentioned, makeup artists don't make that much money.
Right.
So it's like I'm working probably 7 days a week for 3 years just to make barely like more than the average person.
Okay.
So when I see her, and I was telling my mom about it, she's like, no, you need to talk to her. Like you need to, introduce yourself because she probably has like much more information. I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. No one listens to mom. Eventually I saw her in the bathroom and I was like, I just want to let you know, like, I just love your vibe and I hope we can do a coffee chat. I literally said this. It was like so embarrassing now looking back on it. She's like, all right, just put it on my calendar. I was like, okay, well, that was easy. I put it on her calendar. We start to talk and she kind of just takes me under her wing and introduces me into this whole world of what is corporate finance and accounting. She breaks down exactly like how each different function works alongside each other. And I really understand finance on a completely different level. Before that, I was just like, we're processing payments. We are getting money. It's going out the door. That's it. She's like, no, there's departments where we have an acquisition department. There's departments where not only are we raising capital, but we're, acquiring smaller businesses. So she introduces me to other people in the company. So I start working other parts of finance, FP&A, which is financial planning and analysis. I actually start working and volunteering with the acquisitions team just to understand what is actually happening here. Once I have a full scope, the first thing that I noticed is that no one knows this. No one knows what is going on here in these corporate engines. We just think that Google becomes Google because they get a lot of customers. Google becomes Google because they have a financial engine behind them to make sure that not only they get a lot of customers, but that they're reinvesting strategically back into the business, that they're buying up their smaller competitors at a discounted rate. Like there's a full scope of what's happening here. So I had a lot of friends who were in the beauty industry and they would always like bring all the finance questions to me because they knew I worked there full time. And it would just be dumb stuff. Like, if I get Venmo, do I have to pay taxes on it? And I'm just like, girl, yes. But what it made me realize was that there's such a knowledge gap between what women know and what's going on. So I started consulting with other people in the beauty industry, typically like with the ones who had like multiple 6-figure agencies that were, they had other artists working for them. Yes. And I would start working for them. I had one client in particular. She was making about $300,000 when we first started. Then we got her to $900,000, almost $1 million a year. And that's when I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing here. That's kind of like when it clicked for me. That one client, she brought me a ton more clients and I really just built my business off of referrals and word of mouth.
Okay.
And that's how Centra Financial was born.
Okay. Oh, see, you just like paused and that's how Centra Financial was born. I was like, okay. So you surprised me. Mm-hmm. You surprised me. Every piece of content that I had scoured and scrubbed the internet, it starts off with the finance story of her taking her under your wing. I actually didn't know about your first client, and I actually didn't know that was the point of origin. Mm-hmm. So if you juxtapose that story of that first 300 to close to $1 million, and then you say, I know what I'm doing, describe an average client now versus back then so that our viewers and listeners know the power that is Shay Bacani.
What's so funny? Okay, so my average client back then was $300,000, $500,000, and our goal was not so much to get them to $1 million. It was to clean up the mess because they were very messy at this stage. You make multiple six figures and you think that this is just the above all, the all, but you're not managing anything. You don't have a tax strategy. So that's what I was doing in the very beginning.
Okay, let's pause because there are people right now that they have a business that's making multiple six figures, and you would probably say chances are it's probably messier than it is not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because, give me like the 2 or 3 reasons why you say, oh, that's messy. There's no tax strategy.
Yep.
What else?
They are doing bookkeeping, but they don't have any real financial strategy to how the money is getting dispersed. So the money is coming in, everyone's happy, payroll is getting paid, operational expenses are going out. That is just about all that is happening. As long as they see a profit every single month, they're okay with that.
Okay.
But what they're not doing is saying, okay, we are at $500,000 now. We want to get to $2 million in 3 years. What investments do we need to make to actually get there? That's not happening at all. They are making goals. They probably have some sort of Pinterest board to have a vision of what kind of founder they see themselves as, but they don't have any real execution that's happening from getting from 500,000 to 2 million. So for example, when you want to take this kind of jump, it is very difficult. It sounds like it's not a lot, but it's actually very difficult because it's much more of a mindset shift to go from 6 figures to $1 million. One of the biggest shifts is that you are going to have to build a good team, a good enough team to get you to that next level, because chances are who you started with is not going to get you there. So you have to build out a quality team, which most people don't know how to do because they're like, well, how much do I pay people? I don't really make that much. I make just enough. You know how it is at the 6-figure level. It's like, I make just enough to pay people and keep enough for myself in DoorDash. That's just about it. So you have to be really strategic. Every single dollar that comes in, you have to know how to flip it and put it to work. And most people don't understand how critical it is when you make 6 figures. Because chances are, if you're a first generation 6-figure person, that seems like a lot of money, but it's not. So you're spending it like you have a lot of money rather than investing it into the right avenues of marketing, investing it into the sales process, investing it into how to make sure you are retaining each client or that they're referring you other clients. So where the money is going oftentimes at this level is to people and operations when it should be going into marketing, when it should be going into customer retention. And they're not doing it at this stage. When I mention messy, most of the time it's messy because you don't have any strong SOPs. Like everyone is just kind of flying by the seats of their pants. If one person were to leave, they're taking their knowledge and information with them because you don't have a sound system. So that's what I mean when I say messy. Obviously, the financials could be very messy too, which I've seen a lot of. But more so than that, it's like your operations is just completely leaking. It's trash because you don't understand the value of it yet. You're so focused on getting to the next month that you're not understanding, okay, if we want to get to the next year, we have to be more strategic and we have to be more long-term focused. And they're just not like that at that level.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the how, because I do see similar patterns with like the 6-figure scaling to 7. And then once you pass that like 1.5, 2 million, you're set with like a different set of messiness. We'll talk more about the how. But when you look at that first client and you look at your current client roster, how would you describe the businesses that are coming to you? What do you do for them? And what type of negotiations or mergers or acquisitions are you negotiating?
So right now, the average client probably makes $3 to $5 million. They want to get to an $8 to $10 million range. They either want to do that by raising capital, and then once we've raised, or honestly just restructure the business, then they want to get to the point where they can also sell it. So at this level, the biggest issues is not as much of mess. They're actually much more cleaner, much more lean. The issue is that they just don't know how to build a $10 million company. And so what I mean by that is, I think I said this at your mastermind, if your goal, let's say right now you're making 1 million and you want to get to 5 or you want to get to 10, you have to build your infrastructure as if it's already a $5 to $10 million company. So that way the money can flow to you and you can actually sustain it. The biggest issue when you are at a higher level is you can't sustain the growth. The growth it's going to come inevitably, but you actually don't have the capacity to be able to do it. The more work that comes, the more overwhelmed you get. The more work that comes in, your team actually can't support it. So you don't even have a team of A players that can get you to that next level. So I think the biggest thing the clients that I have now is auditing the business and saying, this person needs to go. We need to actually have this person. We are completely looking at their org chart and saying, who do we actually need in place to get there? And then we're looking at the revenue streams. This is the most important part to me because I'm like, you're making money, which is a good start, but you could be making way more. So oftentimes when you're at a level, let's say 3 to 5 million, you probably have a good amount of offers that are making you money, but you're not actually capitalizing on the amount of customers that you have coming through the door. So I'll give you an example. Hotels are really good at this. When you go to book a hotel stay, you're like, okay, that's the one thing I'm buying is the hotel stay, right? Which is good. That's what they're selling you on the forefront. You get there, maybe you get a little bit of room service. Maybe you get a little snack at the bar before you head out. Now you're spending money while you're inside the room. And then let's say you go to another place the next weekend in a different country. Who do you go with? the same exact hotel because you had such a great quality experience. When you are now booking some sort of meeting or conference, who do you book with? The same hotel because you have such a great experience. Hotels are really good at getting one person to spend as much money as possible. Business owners at a, let's say, I would say just 1 to 5 million, they just try so hard to get the customer. And they don't think as much about retention. They don't think about how can we extract the most value from that one person. They just want to get as many new sales as possible. They're not even looking at customer acquisition costs. They're not looking at lifetime value. They're not looking at the churn rate. They're just simply saying, we got this much in sales and we want to get to the next level of sales. That is not how a business that's operating at a $10 million level is looking at it. One person is worth so much more in that company at a $10 million company than it is at a $5 million company.
So then there's like the chicken and the egg. And so I always look at the podcast as like, I'm a voice of the people, right? So someone's like, I agree, Shay, absolutely. How am I going to pay? I'm doing 4 million and I want to get to 10 million, Shay. How do I pay like a $10 million operator or a $10 million CMO to come to my business now if the revenue isn't there to sustain it?
So you're not. We're in an age now where work, and I hate to say it like this, but the value of work has gone down where we have access to a pool of talent that we otherwise wouldn't have had access to. It doesn't mean that you are able to pay them less than what they're worth. It means that you can hire someone at a fractional rate, and they're still able to produce for you at a high output because of AI, because of technology. So rather than saying, okay, I'm going to go, recruit a COO of Google, you can't afford it. So let's just start there. But you can maybe recruit someone who worked as the COO's assistant, and you can have them come because they still know the information, and you can have them come and work for you, maybe at a fractional rate or even full time because they have the information and they've seen the execution. And that's all you need. You need someone who has that level of intellect to say, here's exactly what's missing and be able to execute on your behalf. Most of the time at this level, you have people that are great. If you tell them to go do a job, they're going to do it for you, but they don't have the intelligence to say, we are doing the wrong job. We need to be doing X instead of Y. And so that's what you need. You need smarter people. And it's not to say that people around you are dumb. They've only worked for companies that have done 1 million, 2 million. So they just simply don't know. So you need someone who's worked in companies that have done 10, 20 million and who knows the execution. They know exactly the step-by-step process of what needs to happen. They can look at your SOP. They can look at your business model and say, hey, at other company, we did this and you're not doing that. So this is what needs to change. You need smarter people around you at this level. And most of the time, you still have the people that helped you get to 1 million because you're like, well, these people are great. They helped me. I want to keep them around. But the reality is they are awesome, but they aren't the leaders that you need around you. And so women, I always talk about this. Women, when we are cultivating our network, we are thinking, okay, they're in a similar business as me, or maybe, my clients might benefit from them. So I want them in my network. We talked about this yesterday. It's good to have people like that in your network. But if you want to get to higher level, you almost want to build out your network like you're building out an army. So not like you're going to war, but like you're on a mission. Being on a mission to 10 million, you're going to need as many people on board with that mission as possible. You need a strong legal team. You need someone who's strong in branding, someone who's strong in marketing, someone who's strong in sales. And they're all thinking like war generals of how do we get from point A to point B. Typically, what happens when a woman is making, I would say even 6 figures to, let's say, 5 million max, they have people around them who are good, who can execute, but they don't have that level of intelligence and like that level of strategy that's going to take them to that next level. And that's what we're missing. Even if you don't know how to do it, hire someone else that does know how to do it, or hire a consultant that's going to say, hey, you guys need to do this, but we're not doing it. Oftentimes, we're hiring coaches who haven't been to where we want to go, or they have no clue. They're just like, look, I know what you need maybe from a marketing perspective, but not operations. You need the entire team on board with whatever your mission is. And women always miss that. And I really commend men because they do this all the time. When you think about fraternities and those little secret societies that people always talk about, oftentimes all they're doing is exchanging information. People talk about Elon Musk and PayPal Mafia, which is like some conspiracy that everyone that came from PayPal are like wildly successful and there's some mafia that they have going on. And I don't think it's as deep as, hey, we all have knowledge. Let's get together and talk about this knowledge and get to this next level. We all have a mission of building out the next Google and the next Amazon, the next Apple. Let's all just get in a room and talk about everything that we know that's happening in the market. Women don't do that. We get together and we try to release from business and we try to decompress. No, we need to get together and we all kind of like sit around a round table like this one and all have our strategy as if we're going to war. But instead, the mission is actually going to just be more success, more power, and getting us to that next level. And we don't do that.
So I heard it 2 ways. Can you correct it or codify? So when you talked about building your like A players to go to war, are you talking about network or internal team or both?
Both.
Okay.
So you actually need both. So
Okay.
the internal team is kind of the people who execute for you.
Yes.
They're actually the ones doing the work. They're executing, which is great. Your network is oftentimes going to be the one that can connect the dots for you. Say, hey, you know, I'm looking to raise capital. I think I said this at your mastermind. If you're looking to raise capital or sell, tell everyone you know.
Yep.
Because what's going to happen one day, they're at a cocktail party and
right.
they're going to be talking about it. And so your network is going to be kind of like your evangelist. They're working on your behalf. Even when you and your team are sleeping, they could be the ones talking about whatever it is that you're doing. Oh yeah, Jasmine's actually working on building out an app. Oh really? I build out apps. Okay, I'll connect you guys. That's kind of like what your network is doing. But also what they're delivering is intelligence that you don't know, which is really important. So let's say you are building out, you know, some sort of app that you've never built out before. And you're like, I really wanted to do this, but I don't really know how. Oh, I've done that before. All you need to do is, hire this person and they'll get it done for you. Oh, okay. That's it? Yes. So it's intelligence that you need. And oftentimes we are surrounding ourselves around people who are very good at what they do and they're very smart, but they don't have the intelligence of what we need to get to that next level. If you want to get to 10 million, that should be who your circle is getting around enough people who make 10 million as possible. So you can just absorb all that information. Because they clearly know something you don't know, or else you would have been there already. And so you need that level of intelligence. And when you think about what war strategy is, it's intelligence, it's intel. That's what they always say, like they have intel. That's all it is. They know something that you don't know. And I feel like women, we value coaches and consultants, but we don't value that level of strategy, in my opinion. Because if we did, we would be sitting around a table.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I was not expecting to go here, but actually speak your truth about this. I had a conversation today with another 8-figure founder. And we're talking about, she's like, Jasmine, where's the network? Where's that 8-figure network? And I was like, girl, if and when those networks for me happen, it's always just back of the napkin. Like, you in town? Great, you in town. But what about like, and she's like, but why isn't somebody setting it up? And I was like, nobody wants to do the logistics.
Yeah, that is
and
true.
And nobody wants to set it up because like we're all doing 1,000 different things. And I said, how about this? How about you have your operator set it up and set that room up? And she kind of just sat with it for a little bit and had maybe considered it. But do you think that we aren't doing it for any other reason than like all of us are running at 100,000 miles an hour and we have our families and we have this other stuff? Like, why don't you think we're doing it?
I don't think that's it because men also, you got to think about high-performing men. They're working 12-hour days. And so it's not a matter of, well, I'm too busy, I can't do it. I think it comes down to women just aren't conditioned to get in a room and talk about that. So you got to think we do get together.
Yeah.
Like women have these summits and they have these festivals and they have these business conferences. We're getting together actually quite a bit. We're getting together a lot. If you go online and you look up all these business women.
I know.
Yeah, you get women together all the time. So it's not a matter of are we doing it enough? I think the issue is that when we get together, we aren't having the right conversation. Men go to golf to talk business and talk deals. They go to a 5-star restaurant and you see finance bros and they're talking about the market. When women, we go to the restaurant, we're talking about the kids, we're kind of releasing, we're taking a load off. And I get it because as I don't want to go away from our natural trait of we're just very communal. We want, how are you? We want to talk about the family. We want to talk about the kids, which is fine. But we have to know when to say, okay, we've caught up. What are you working on? What are you doing in 5 years? What are you doing in 5 years? What is your thoughts on how the market is going to be? What are your insights on the future of social media? What are your insights on this? Like we aren't having that conversation is never being had. And if it is being had, it's had 1-to-1. You know, we will talk about this. Maybe you talk about it with another friend. I just talked to Shay about this. It was really interesting. Yeah, that was good. Yep. Okay. Nothing ever comes from it. But you got to think if PayPal Mafia really got together, that means that they were getting together, having this level of intellect. And then, okay, let's go execute and we'll be back here next year. The World Economic Forum. That's a huge event that happens annually every single year with a bunch of billionaires and bankers. What are they saying in that room? No one knows. But they are getting together and having these conversations about this future state of the global economy, of the global financial state. They're talking about how currency is going to change, how the dollar is going to get removed. You know, they're having those conversations. The masses, the 99% of people aren't in on those conversations, but they're being had because they want to dictate, they want power over how that all plays out. Now, women are a little bit different. I think that rather than trying to have power over others, we just need to have power over our own business and our industry. So rather than us getting together talking about, you know, geopolitical state, let's just get together and say, okay, I know that you are in social media marketing. What are your thoughts on the next 5 years? How do I adapt? If I were to create some sort of agency that supported this industry, what does that look like? You give your insight and your intelligence. And then we all go and say, okay, in the next 12 months, here's exactly what we're going to do. Let's meet back here in a year from now. And we have that conversation. That is what we need.
So we talk about this and we talk about creating teams, armies around us in a network capacity and in a team capacity. And we started the conversation by talking about building a buildable asset. And when we look at a business, and when you look at a business, because this is what you do professionally, is you look at businesses, what are the key factors in making sure that you say this is an asset and not a liability? Outside of, are you too much in the business? Things like that. Talk to us about somebody can go through their business right now and say, I'm on an asset track.
Okay, so how I like to look at it is there's 4 parts. It's actually spells out SAIL. So scalability, brand allure, so allure, leverage, and earnings. So S for scalability. This is obviously owner independence, but more importantly, how big can the business get? So if right now you have a strong team, maybe a strong tech stack, if this business was operating at the most capacity, what would that look like? Could you support 1,000 customers a year, 2,500? That's what scalability is all about. You want to understand how scalable is this business model. If it is extremely scalable, meaning that you have software into place, maybe you have a strong tech stack, you can onboard anywhere between 10 to 100 clients in any given week. That is a scalable business. It can take off at any given time. And then A for allure. Allure means that this brand is alluring to both consumers and investors. And how to make a brand alluring, it's all about perception. So what does Google say about you? What is your brand perception like? Another thing that makes a brand alluring is pricing power. I talked about Erewhon when I was at your mastermind. Erewhon is a very alluring brand to both the consumer and an investor. You're getting people to pay 3 times the price of groceries. That is interesting. I want to sit down and talk to you. So it doesn't mean that you're going to invest right away, but it's alluring enough where you want to have a conversation. And that part is really important. The L is for leverage. Leverage is what is unique about you. What do you have that when we go into a room and negotiate, you say, I have this and no one else has this, or I have this and it's very hard to come by. Example of leverage is IP, intellectual property. How much of that do you actually have? Maybe it is an example of this is like the company Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow's blog. She has access to a very wealthy consumer, affluent consumer that's really into wellness. This is why she was able to raise millions from private equity, because they know it's very hard to come across this consumer in one consolidated place. That is her leverage point. And then E is for earnings. So earnings is financials. What financial story is being told? Are you profitable or not there yet? Do you profitable, but you have cash flow issues? What is the financial story that's being told? Because it's always going to come down to finances. It's always going to come down to, is this business actually even worth anything on paper? So that's kind of the quick thing that you can go through to ask yourself, okay, is this actually something that someone would want to buy? Is this actually investable? So we'll actually go back just to kind of break it down on each one to see what problems would be in each one. So let's say scalability. The number one problem that we already talked about was owner dependency, meaning you're in too many parts of the business. But another part would also be infrastructure. So you don't have the infrastructure to support where you want to go. When you are sending out a pitch deck, and I look at a lot of pitch decks, and they say, we're going to make 250 million in the next 5 years. Okay. And you start talking to them, because that's, people say, they literally make it up on a pitch deck. We're going to meet, 100 million. We're going to get acquired by Google in 10 years. They say anything, which is fine. You can say anything, but how to basically call them out is, what do you have to support this? Like, can you support 1,000 customers this year? Well, no, not yet. We don't have the infrastructure, or, our team is getting there. Okay, so this isn't actually scalable. This is just all theoretical. So you want to make sure that the business is scalable to where you want to go. If you say you want to grow to 10 million, this is why I said you need to start with your infrastructure. Create the infrastructure of a business that can be supported at 10 million. If not, you're never going to get there. You're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh, I have 10 million. Let me go build the infrastructure. You built the business like that now. And oftentimes we're actually in a world where that's easier, because a $10 million infrastructure doesn't mean you have to go get a brick and mortar. It means that you have to build out quality tech stack. You have to build out, oftentimes it's IP. So what IP do you have? It's white labeling, having different strategic partnerships. It's not as much as it used to be if I have to have 20 million stores. And it's more so about, what does the tech look like to be able to support this? Brand allure, I think this is something that actually women are really good at. And most of the time people actually check the boxes here, but I'll go through it anyway. So brand allure means that when I Google this business, other people would agree that this brand is really cool. So there's a lot of mentions in media. There's a lot of different PR. There's people doing podcasts, case studies about the brand. When people are talking about your industry, your name tends to come up, because the brand is alluring. It's cool. If you're not there yet, you need to get to that point, because oftentimes, especially now with a lot of founder-led brands, they're able to raise capital, or they're able to sell just based on the fact that people are saying they're the next big brand. This is what everyone should be doing. We're also in this era on social media where people are using brands as case studies in real time. So, I saw this social strategy that Le Labo did, and here's why you need to do it. That's another example of brand allure where everyone is starting to just watch you. They want to see what this brand does next. And that's really, really important for an investor because investors love to feel like they're early. They love to feel like, well, I got in where they were, just at this size. So that part is really important because investors look at that. And then L for leverage. So leverage is actually something most people don't think about. But when you are negotiating your deal, whether that is to raise capital, even whether that is to hire someone on or you want to sell, you have to have leverage. So leverage is that thing where you're sitting at the table and I tell you, I think my company is worth X and you tell me I think it's worth Y. And we have to basically settle and figure out what it's worth. The leverage is going to be what does that. So if you have IP, let's say you have a social media agency. If you say, well, this is the best social media agency, it makes $5 million a year, it's the best. And I say, okay, well, you're not the only social media agency that makes $5 million a year. What else do you have? After I ask you that question, that answer is your leverage. So we have, this level of talent. We have only the top influencers that have 2 million followers. We actually dominate the beauty and wellness space. Or maybe we have access to over 100,000 social media managers who are ready to work, which is actually very hard to find, like a level of quality social media managers. So whatever it is that you have, that is your leverage. And you need to be building leverage all throughout your business. It's kind of like that unique factor that's actually valuable. So everyone, if you ask someone like, what makes you unique? They typically go kind of the brand positioning route. Well, we offer cow milk instead of tea. They start kind of going more into the features. And I'm like, no, I want to know if I were to, what makes this company valuable? Because when it comes, sometimes it does just come down to financials. If I have a $5 million agency and you have a $5 million agency, who's going to determine who gets the money? It's going to be down to what unique leverage that we have. And so that part is really important. And then the final E, when it comes down to earnings, people think that how much you make actually means something when you want to sell your business. And it doesn't really actually mean that much, to be honest. I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't mean that much. When you are getting ready to sell, they're actually not just looking at revenue. They're looking at something called EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. That's a fancy way. That's how profitable your business is before you pay taxes and before your accountant does all that funny stuff to make sure that you don't have to pay taxes, basically. So it shows any investor, okay, here's how much a business is truly worth. After we've paid all the expenses, here's how much a business is truly worth. That EBITDA or that profit before, all of that is the most important number. That number is actually what determines what the business is worth. So when you want to sell and you look, well, we make 10 million, okay, but we profit 2 million, you're going to be in for a rude awakening because that number, that what you profit is actually much more important than you think. That's actually what they're using to determine the value of the company. And so if you know that you want to exit for 10 million, okay, that means that your revenue actually has to be at 20 and your profit likely has to be at 5 because you can sell at a multiple. So for those that don't know what that means that they're looking at your profit. Let's say the profit is $1 million. They're actually going to multiply that by 2, anywhere between 2 to 5. That's how you're going to get the value of your company. Now, that's a little bit more complex than that because we have to look at everything, but that is kind of like the baseline if you want to understand what your company is worth. So most people are only looking at revenue. You have to look at how profitable this company is if you are planning to sell it.
So somebody's watching and they say, okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really aiming to sell my business.
Okay.
I want to make a very good business. And I want this business, I would love to work in this business 20 to 25 hours. I want this to be making a lot of money. If somebody comes to you and says that, do you change your perspective or your advice for what it is they're trying to do?
No, absolutely not. Because they're saying that now. Here's what always happens. They're saying that now.
Ooh.
When your parents get sick, when your kids grow up and they graduate, when maybe you get a divorce and maybe your husband's like, hey, I'm done. I want to move to another country. Life changes. And so when life changes, inevitably your business is like how you operate your business is going to change. And so people say this while things are going great, like this is my baby. This is my company. I'm never going to leave. And then, as life goes on, different things happen and you realize maybe your kids don't want the business or you don't want to pass it down. And you're like, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be involved in this. And oftentimes, especially, I work with a lot of visionary entrepreneurs, meaning they are the ones with all the best ideas. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, you have so many ideas that you're sitting on that you can't execute because you're in this business. So it's not a matter of maybe you don't want to sell, but you do want to step back because you have to be able to create other ventures. You have so many ideas that you can't physically go out and execute because you just don't have the bandwidth or capacity. And so advice doesn't change because I know oftentimes their minds are going to change, even if it's 5 years down the line. So my process is always going to be the same because I'm like, regardless if you want to stay in the business or not, you don't want to be a slave to the business. So this framework is still going to help you get out of it as much as possible while still seeing the vision. Because people think that, okay, when I step back, the business is no longer mine. Apple is still operating.
Right.
It's still operating. Steve Jobs' vision, we still get to see it in real time because the company is it's vision led. It's not, but it's still led with processes and systems. And so that's how you have to think. What is your vision for the company? Really lay it out and be very specific. It's not so much about money, but it's like when people see this vision, when they see this brand, what do they see? What stores are we in? What is the perception of this? That is what you are building. And so then you don't need to execute that. When you realize that you are truly a visionary, you don't have to be the one to execute that, but you do have to outline how you want the culture to operate on the inside. And then someone can tell you, okay, if that's how you want it to operate on the inside, here's what the org chart needs to look like, meaning here's how we need to hire from the top down. But you don't have to actually be in the business. And it's probably best if you're not in the business because sometimes you're too emotional. Everyone is so emotional when they're in it. And so I think that's why it's so important to step out. So you can really just look at it from a bird's eye view and say, is this my vision? Is this what I want? And if the answer is no, you have to be willing to hire someone that can do that for you.
So if we might, as we are taking all of this information, I'm wondering, and I did ask for her permission. So there was a woman in my mastermind. She had been in there and you came and you spoke at our second live event. So by this time, she did give me her permission to use her name. So Paige Griffin of the Legal Page, she was sitting there and she had been talking about the structure of her business. And so I'm going to describe the structure of her business. I'm going to describe what the business looked like when she encountered your presentation, because I feel like there's people who are watching and listening right now. And so at the time, she had a legal firm. She has lawyers and attorneys working underneath her. She also sold digital contracts. And she decided to add on a layer for scalability, because while the contracts itself were scalable, she said, if I had a tech layer that a small business owner would be able to buy a contract template and be able to take payment by adding an IP layer to it. So when we're going through this sale acronym, the scalability, then the brand allure is that every person in the wedding world knew that she was the go-to person.
Absolutely.
This is where you get started. So back in the day, if and when you were a makeup artist, you would be able to get a contract and take payments to that platform. That goes back to the allure. And then she had the leverage. What's unique about her is that her name and her brand and her attorneys were pervasive across all industry, like all cross disciplines in that industry, DJs, venues, photographers, makeup artists. And then lastly, earnings. That girl's profit, like her business was, I'm not going to spill that tea, but very strong business, phenomenal profitability. And at the end of your conversation, she went up to you, that girl got her plate at lunch, got real close to you, started asking you questions. And at the time she said, I'm going to do this on my own. And then after you gave a very clear presentation of scalability around getting investors, she's like, I talked to Shay and I'm so ready to move in this direction. My goal in saying that story is that somebody right now is watching this and they're learning how to see their business as an asset and see how the asset can change their life. I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for blowing my mind. Thank you for being so inspirational. I was always inspired by you. And then now I know like the back story. And I'm like, you have just come a long way.
Absolutely.
This is freaking credible. I am so happy to be sitting here with you. Now, people are going to want to learn more about what it is you do. They want to learn more how they go deeper. They're going to know, are they qualified to even potentially be in your ecosystem, in your sphere? Where do people go to get more information? What are you pointing them to? Is there like a baseline for the people size of business that you work with?
Absolutely. So the businesses that I work with are anywhere between $1 to $15 million in revenue. And they have to actually at least meet that sale mark. So they have to have some sort of scalability. They have to have some allure, some leverage. It doesn't have to be a lot in earnings. If they aren't at that level yet, I'll actually put them through my investable program, which is a 12-month program where we actually go through all 4 of those pillars and then some to basically reverse engineer an asset that an investor would want to buy. And the program, the first thing that I look at is I look at the business, I look at the model, I look at the founder, and I say, okay, based on all this information, here's the type of investor that would likely invest with you.
Amazing.
And an angel investor. Maybe you would likely settle private equity, whatever the case may be. And then we reverse engineer that business to make sure that it's appealing to those parties.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know.
Yeah,
okay, where do they go for that?
So that's invite or referral only. But if you apply and you say, I heard you on Jasmine's podcast, because I've gotten to a point where it's very picky because the level of dedication that is required to scale or sell, it is a lot. And most people just truly aren't. They don't want to do it. Like they think they want to. And so I always like to interview every client myself to say, okay, like what is your goal here? What is your work ethic like? What is your team? Are you willing to get rid of people if they aren't performing? And I want to understand, are you truly ready to get this business to become an asset? Because it's not as sexy as it may sound. Like creating an asset, it's not actually fun. You're going to actually go through a process. I'm working with a client now where we're getting them ready for an acquisition. And they're like, Shay, this is a bit much. Not much as far as time-wise, but it's like, I didn't know I'm going to have to let this team member go. Yeah. I didn't know I'd have to cut this offer. And so you really have to rework it because you realize you have to cut the dead weight. And most of it is mental. Most of us mentally don't want to shed those old things. And so I want to vet every client to see if that's what you're prepared for. But if you're not ready, that is okay, because you can find me on Spotify or Apple Podcast, typing Shay Bacani, and just consume the information. And then whenever you're ready and you're like, Shay, I want to do this. I'm ready to do this.
That's how I found you. I already said that.
Yeah.
I'm going to link it in the show notes because I will tell you how like the level of creep that I did of your content. Mm-hmm. And you do podcasts and you create content to empower people to self-serve until they're ready.
Absolutely.
So where do they go to get more information about whether or not they're ready or just to learn more about you?
Learn about Century Financial at Century Financial. Shay and Finance is my personal Instagram if you want to get to know me on a personal level, which I think is important because we really become best friends during that process. Like I'm all in your business. Yeah. So you
literally.
So you want to see, okay, what do I actually vibe with this person? So I have to say follow both accounts and then just stay up to date on all the podcasts that I do. I tend to do podcasts with like more high level masterminds, high level podcasts because I want to get in front of the right audience. Right. But I think no matter what stage of business you're in, when you are listening to that information, take what you need. But also, I have an investability assessment. So it's also an assessment that I have. It's a link in my bio. And I want you to actually take that assessment. It will tell you exactly which of these areas you're weak in. Is it in the brand allure? Is it in the scalability? Or sometimes is it in your leverage? You don't have enough IP. You don't have anything that's actually interesting. So take that assessment and they'll give you a blueprint, at least for the next 12 months to say, okay, here's exactly what I'm going to work on for the next 12 months. And so you'll actually know if you qualify to be a client right away after you take that assessment.
This queen did not come to play. Shay, thank you. Century Financial and Shay in Finance. Y'all, just a big round of applause. If you found this at all helpful, share it with a friend. Pass it specifically to another woman who wants to have conversations about finances and asset class and getting around this round table with brilliant other women. I want to say thank you for watching and listening to The Jasmine Star Show.